Hello YouTubers, Troz here, playing some more Kerbal Space Program 1.0, and today I thought I'd take a look at some of the training and scenarios that they've added, or improved. So I'm going to take a look at training first. Looks like they have quite a variety here. Construction basics present Werner von Karman himself covers the basic construction. Got some flight basics, orbiting, science. So let's take a look at this. Welcome to today's lecture on vessel construction. I'm Werner von Karman. Whether you want to put a satellite into orbit, fly a transcontinental flight, or step onto the very surface of the moon, you're going to need to build yourself a ship. It'll be pretty easy even if you're not a world-famous scientist like myself. First part of any vessel in construction is a command module. This part will contain a plucky Kerbal crew or automated pilot mechanism. Oh, okay. It was the only choice. Yeah, we don't have that many parts. Pick it up by clicking, and clicking the root part will move the whole rocket. Oh, hover over it. Yeah, well. There's the information. You can right click to get some more specifics. Easily connect to parts like that. The rockets create jets of high energy gas which push the vessel along. Select one and add it underneath the fuel tank. New icon appeared down here. Parts that have actions will appear there. You add new stages and control the order in which they'll be. Add new stages, move things between stages. You can actually drag them around. And yeah, there's a right-click menu, at least once you're actually flying, that you can activate or deactivate items. Radial attachment parts are designed to attach to the surfaces of others. This is a decoupler, tiny explosion that separates the parts in the previous stage from the rest of the vessel. Please use the two large buttons, bottom left, to control how the editor duplicates and snaps surface-mounted parts, and attach some, and then some solid fuel boosters. Always use more boosters. I'm going to... Let's do three-way symmetry here. And so we have three solids, separatrons, and then the liquid. Ship looks interesting. If you want to modify the order in which parts to activate, you can do so. Actually, we can have the solid, the liquid engine activate as we toss the solids away. If you want to see the center of mass, lift, or thrust, you can use the three small buttons in the lower left. Center of mass, center of thrust, and we don't have center of lift because we don't have any wing or fin parts. Basic rule of thumb is you'll want to keep these centered within the full ship. Probably bringing to your attention that you just started your space career, you don't have any decouplers available in career mode. Last but not least, make sure you assign a name to your vessel by selecting the name box and saving it. Test craft, and then save it. Looks like your time's almost up. I have to give you another science briefing to the world media. Point out that you have very few parts and you should do some research to unlock more of them. If you don't know how to do this, come join me for the science tutorial. Now we'll unlock all parts for you to play around. Click the tabs far left to view the different part categories. You show yourself out of the construction facility with the red button on the top right when you're done experimenting. Off we descend. Well, yes. If you're familiar with the game, you know, here we have all the parts, the pod parts or control parts that either Kerbals can sit in or are computers that control probes. I did not realize that this was... Oh, it's been modified to be... this used to just be a battery. Now it apparently is a battery with a probe body. It's an interesting change. Then we have fuel tanks. These hold fuel for the most part. This is technically not a fuel tank, but it lets you attach two fuel tanks together so fuel will flow between them. Some of these hold liquid fuel on oxidizer. Some of these hold monopropellant for the RCS, reaction control system. And this one holds ore. Some just hold liquid fuel for aircraft because they take in air from the outside. They don't need oxidizer. And some of them hold xenon gas for the ion engine. Here's your engines. All different. Most of these are liquid engines. Liquid engine. When I say liquid, I mean liquid fuel and also need oxidizer. A few of these are solid fuel. Solid fuel boosters. Basically, it's a solid that once it's heated, ignites and burns out eventually. These solid fuel boosters, once they're lit, can't be stopped and can't be throttled, where liquid fuel, you can throttle them up and down by just varying how much liquid goes in them per second. Some of these are jet engines. They take only liquid fuel, not oxidizer, but they take outside air, so you'll need some kind of air intake on your craft. So we have a basic jet engine and a turbo ramjet engine. Here is the ion engine, which basically uses electricity to charge gas particles and fling them out at high speed. So basically this uses the xenon gas at a very, very low rate, but it also uses a lot of electricity. So you need big solar panels or some other method of generating electricity on your craft. Relatively, it's very little thrust. The thing is, you can probably run for weeks on, the larger fuel tank. So it's low thrust, but it's also extremely efficient. We also have this Rapier engine, which is an interesting engine. It's basically a mix of a rocket engine and a jet engine. It can switch between two modes, a jet engine mode where it takes in outside air and liquid fuel, and a rocket mode where it then needs oxidizer and liquid fuel. So you can see on the side here that there's basically two different modes. You can either leave it on automatic mode where it will switch as needed, or you can manually switch it between the modes. Next we have command and control, and these are basically your RCS thrusters, and your SAS reaction wheels. This is also a SAS system for aircraft, which will then use the aircraft's fins and control surfaces to hold stability. The next big section is structural. These are basically parts that make up your ship that aren't tanks or engines or anything like these. This is just structure, either beams coming off that you can put sensors or solar panels or other things on, or things like struts that will hold parts together better so they don't wobble. This also contains your decouplers, a radial decoupler like this, hydraulic detachment manifold, or your vertical decouplers like these stack separators. Also contains the stability enhancers, basically the launch clamps that will hold your ship when it's on the launch pad, and it also contains these couplers that will take a small single body and split it into 3 or 2 or 4, or there's larger versions that will go from a large body to smaller bodies, either 2 or 3 or 4. Next is aerodynamics section, and this contains all your wing parts, wings and tails and intakes, but it also now contains the fairing parts. So if your rocket has a probe on top that's not very aerodynamic, you can create a fairing around it that will make it aerodynamic, block the air from interacting with the probe. Instead, it will just go around the surface of this fairing. And then once you get up to altitude or out of the atmosphere, you can release the fairing and then undock the probe and have it go on its way. This also contains the heat shields and various nose cones and control surfaces. Utility is basically a catch-all. Anything that didn't fit in the other categories that also isn't a science item. So we have the claw for grabbing onto asteroids. We got some docking ports. We got ladders. We got a fuel cell. We got solar panels. There's more solar panels on the next page. Some lights. This is another docking. This is the ore to fuel converter. We got an escape system. Arguably, this could be put in engines, but it's not designed to really get you anywhere. This you can put on top of a pod, and if something goes wrong, you can activate it using, there's an abort button that you can activate this with. And it fires for just a short amount of time, and it fires somewhat asymmetrically, so it basically will pull your capsule off and to the side to get it out of the way of an exploding rocket. Got some landing legs, some landing gear for your aircraft. We got parachutes. We got cargo bays for aircraft, and there is also here the new service bays, which are basically rocket cargo bays. We got here's some more solar panels. Here's a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, which is basically a fancy way of saying an electricity generator that uses nuclear decay. We got some ladders. We got the hitchhiker storage container. This is also a crew cabin for aircraft. We got some bigger wheels here. Here's again the service bays. Some more solar cells, more ladders, rover wheels, and finally batteries. Finally, there's the science, and these are various instruments that are needed to do science, either directly gather science, like we got our gravioli detector, accelerometer, thermometer, atmospheric fluid spectrovariometer, goo containment unit, and our Science Junior Materials Bay, and the barometer, and the new surface scanning module. In addition, we have antennas, which are generally needed to broadcast the science back. There's also the new broadband and narrowband scanners that are needed to find ore. And finally, the mobile science processing lab. So that's the parts. Let's see if we can launch this thing. Apparently we can't. Let's look at flight basics. Probably be Werner again, but probably skip through most of what he says. We got Gene Kerman, Flight Launch Center. He's Gene Kerman. I'll teach you the basics. Trust you already checked the basic construction. Yes. Spacecraft is all about being in control of a generally very chaotic situation as a pilot. Your main controls will affect the pitch, roll, and yaw of the ship. Let's look at those first. Pitch is the angle of nose in relation to the horizon. So if you're pointed at the horizon, either pitching up or pitching down. Positive is up. Negative pitch means nose is pointing towards the ground. You control with the W and S keys. So you can see the pitch indicator over here as I press the W and the S key. Yaw control is spinning around the vertical axis, so yaw to the right or yaw to the left. So yaw A, yaw to the left, D, yaw to the right. Then we have roll, which tilts the ship this way or that way. So we got yaw to the left with Q or roll to the left with Q and roll to the right with E. By controlling them together, you can keep the ship in controlled level flight. Let's look at another basic control, the throttle. Throttle controls the power output of the ship's engines, at least the liquid ones. Solid engines aren't throttleable. So more throttle means more thrust and more lifting power. Yes, again, only the ones that can be throttled. Holding the ship at full throttle over a long period of time can cause the engines to overheat and will eventually explode if the heat isn't managed. So left shift will throttle up, left control will throttle down, and then you have Z, which will instantly go to max, or X, which will instantly cut it off. Rest of the flight controls. SAS stands for Stability Augmentation System, and basically it keeps your ship trying to go in the direction it's pointed. Various things like wind or asymmetric thrust or other things will attempt to turn your ship in various directions. So with SAS on, it will attempt to hold direction. Basically, a little shipboard computer will attempt to hold a direction. Now you also have other options, like you can tell it to point in a particular direction using these other controls, but the basic control is just to hold the direction. It can be activated momentarily or deactivated momentarily by pressing the F key. So if I just press it, it turns it off. If it's off and I press it, it turns it on momentarily. RCS system is turned on with the R key, and that activates small little thrusters like these on the ship to help you turning the ship. A big tall ship won't turn fast with just the internal flywheels or maneuvering wheels, as they're called. Basically big gyroscopes that are spun faster or slower, and spinning them up or slowing them down will add torque to the ship to turn it. But the bigger the ship is, the less effect they have. So adding these RCS thrusters, they're small little engines that use a different type of fuel that you only need basically it will combust all by itself. It won't need anything else. They'll produce extra thrust in a particular direction to help turn the ship. So you turn that on with R, and then both your controls and the SAS controls will use it. But you'll use up your monopropellant. Staging. So space will launch/activate the next stage, and you'll activate the bottom stage and go up each time you press space. If the automatically generated stage setup or even one made for you is causing strife, or you just change your mind, you can edit the stage sequence on the fly. Nav ball, important part of knowing where you go. Right now, you're seeing all blue, and we're right at the center, which means our nose is facing the very center of the sky up above us. If you turn more, you'll start seeing brown, and that indicates where the ground is. You see the ship's nose in relation to the horizon, as well as its heading, compass, bearing, and you're also given the speed. There's several icons that indicate things like current velocity, but we'll have a look at those later. Altimeters up at the top, as well as the vertical speed indicator and the atmosphere gauges. Altimeter will show the distance to the planet's surface at sea level. So the actual surface may be higher than that. As you can see, we're currently at 94 meters. I believe that's the reading of the crew capsule. I think the ground here is actually at 65 meters. Vertical speed gauge shows how fast your altitude is changing. So if you're going up, it will be up here, and how far up is how fast up you're going. If you're going down, the needle will be down on this side. The atmosphere gauge indicates how deep the ship is in the planet's atmosphere. This helps you know if the ship is high enough for orbiting without losing speed to air resistance, or judge how effectively your wings and control surfaces will be. Wings and control surfaces work very well when you're in the light blue part. They work little in the middle blue part. They basically don't work at all in the upper blue part, and they definitely don't work in the black part, because you're basically in space there, although technically you're not into space until you hit the very edge. Crew, generally a good idea to keep an eye on them and keep them alive throughout the flight. They gain skills as they go on missions, and they get more abilities. Check on their role or skill level from the map view and clicking on the Kerbal button. Alright, okay, enough talk. We're unlocked the flight controls, clear for launch. Actually, controls for launch to make it interesting. You will not be able to use SAS control. Try to keep the ship steady yourself. At any time, press escape to pause the game. Now set the throttle to max. And hit space to launch. For this particular ship, you'll need to do it twice. Once to start the engines, and once more to release the clamps. Can we bring up our indicator here? Alright. And up you go. Now practice all the controls. Let's just turn a little to begin our gravity turn. Little roll there. If you forget, you can always press escape and just don't get too carried away. Ship steady because you're going to space today. Remember, press the space button to dump empty fuel. Oh, yep. Should have done it already. Reading and not paying attention. Gotta dump these next. There we go. Well, I'd say here's the map view, but I can't see Kerbin. I'm not sure what happened to it. Kind of going off, not exactly straight. Alright, yeah, we're high enough up that atmosphere doesn't affect us too much, so really turning over isn't too much of an issue now. Press M, and yeah, there's a bit of a problem there, as I don't really see the ship on the map. So maybe this needs a little more testing. We're gonna get into orbit. I'm actually pretty sure we're in orbit by now. Although I can't see it. Yeah, so you can click warp here now on the orbital path. For some reason, I just can't see the orbital path. But we're definitely going fast enough to have an orbit for the height we're at. Let's end the scenario. Because, for whatever reason, because the map's not working, can't seem to get much further. Orbiting 101. Welcome to Orbiting 101 training program. It's Gene Kermit again. Orbiting is nothing more than free falling. The only thing is that as you fall, you're moving so fast forward that you actually miss the ground. Because up here, there's no atmosphere to slow you down, you will continue to free fall endlessly around the planet without having to use your engines. We're currently on a low, almost circular orbit around Kerbal. To get a better view of your situation, press the M key. Not sure what we were focused on there. Can we set focus on? Well, this is a map view here. You can see your ship's position in its current trajectory around the planet. Hold right click and move the mouse to look around. See your orbit from various angles. Also, hovering over icons on the map will display more information about them. Okay. Close the map when you're ready. Press the M key so we can proceed. Good, let's get a practical view now. Why don't I? It's like I'm still in the map. The map icons are still here. And I don't see my ship. Alright, because there's no dragon slowing you down for every input you apply, you'll have to apply an opposite one to come to a stop again. I'm going to remotely nudge your attitude controls a little and try to get the ship back under control afterwards. If you find yourself totally out of control, hit T to toggle SAS on. Are you ready? Okay, here we go. Yeah, I'm wondering. I did install this over 0.90, so I'm wondering if that has causing some issues with these scenarios. Alright, I'll be right back when I get this figured out. Okay, we are back. After validating my game files, things seem to be working a lot better. I now have a ship. So let's go through this. orbiting is nothing more than falling and missing the ground. That's because we are, while we're falling towards the surface, we are also traveling very fast sideways, so we wind up balancing those forces, and so we're always falling in towards the center, but we're also traveling this way, so that travel basically gets bent around into a circle. Let's take practical. Trust you already know your basic spacecraft controls. Up here, they're very much the same, only that we lack an atmosphere. It makes the ship behave quite a bit differently. There's no friction to slow us down, mostly. Yep, because there's no drag to slow us down, every input you have to apply an opposite eventually. So, so if I start us spinning, we're gonna basically keep spinning forever until, let's get all the 180 degrees around here, until I apply an opposite to bring us to a stop. Alright, we are ready. Okay, here we go. And let's stop the roll. Alright. Let's just press next to move on. Here's what you need. Here's what the various icons mean. Prograde and retrograde vectors, they point towards and away from the direction we're traveling. So we're going towards this, we're coming from that one. Radial in and radial out, they point towards and away from the current orbited body. So this is towards the body we orbit, and this is away from the body we orbit. Normal and anti-normal vectors, they are perpendicular to the orbital plane. Basically, they're perpendicular to both of these. So this points upwards or northwards, and this points downwards or southwards, if you want to think of it that way. And so we're here. You can see if I point directly here and stop, you see the ship is pointing south, or down as the camera normally is. Down not in the gravity sense, but in the picture sense. Down is towards the big ball in the gravity sense. Open the map again. Basic maneuvers. Apogee, or apoapsis, is the highest point in the orbit. That's the best place to raise your apoapsis, is at the periapsis, which is the lowest place in your orbit, because they're always opposite of each other. We're going to reach it in a few minutes, yes. Once there, we'll face prograde and burn. Instead of pressing period, I'm just going to say warp here. Passing 10 times faster than normal. We should be there in a few moments. Control time warp with the period and comma keys, or the happen to be the greater than or less than keys without shift. Alright, we're a few seconds away. Turn prograde and do our burn. However, instead of closing the map, let's just bring up the nav wall here, which you can do by clicking on this button. So we need to turn prograde, which should be right here. Let's turn on SAS. Oh, that is retrograde. That has the X. There we go. Yes, I already turned on SAS, keep her steady. And press the Z key. Go to a full throttle. I'm gonna go to 800 kilometers. So he's giving the readout, but you can also get the readout mousing over this, or I believe you can generally click it and get it to stay up. There you go. 6, 7. There we go. With orbital maneuvers, pretty much everything you do will affect the opposite side of your orbit. So if you raise the highest point, you get thrust forward at the lowest point. And similarly, to raise the lowest point, you thrust forward at the highest point. Press next, and I'll time warp us there. Notice how the ship loses speed as it climbs up the orbit. It's because we're climbing away from the planet as if you would climb a hill, and you just lose speed as you're going up. Oh, burn at prograde again to raise our periapsis and circularize our orbit. Notice it's an ellipse now. The object we're orbiting is at one point of the ellipse, but you can see it's somewhat egg-shaped currently. So now we have to spin around, because now we're facing our retrograde direction. That looks to be good. Fire up the engines. Eccentricity is a measure of how elliptical an ellipse is. You can see that is decreasing. So once it hits 0, you'll be perfectly circular. Not perfectly circular, but we're accurate within a few percent. That's how you change the size of your orbit. This maneuver should come on handy in many situations. Look into changing your orbital inclination. The inclination, see right now, we're basically going right through the equator. So we have a 0-degree inclination. If we were going at a 45, that would be called a 45-degree inclination. Of course, there's positive 45 and negative 45. So, and you generally do that by using the normal directions. The angle it makes with the equator, you should still be nearly 0 inclination, even though we change our altitude. Changing inclination is done by thrusting 90-degree angles to your prograde vector, but without changing your pitch relative to the surface. Our present nearly equator our prograde is due east. That means increase our inclination. We should, so that orbit takes us to higher altitudes, we have to burn towards the normal direction, as I said. Next. Let me your head spin. That ball once again comes to your rescue. Change your orbital inclination. In this case, we'll need to use the normal vector. Let's try it now. Turn the ship to the normal direction. And open up the throttle. Alright. There we go. Oh, had fingers on the wrong keys, which is... So that's the normal direction. It's basically north. And, until about 10 degrees. You see we're tilting. Six. 10. There we go. We are now on a 10-degree inclination. How you change your orbital inclination for these maneuvers, it's always better to do it in the slowest part of the orbit, so you don't have to spend as much delta V to turn your orbit around. It also means inclination changes on larger orbits, such as what we are on now, take less fuel than the same change on a lower orbit. Keep in mind that changing inclination doesn't necessarily mean accelerating to the north or south. It means accelerating 90-degree headings to your prograde vector. which on our equatorial orbit happened to be towards north and south. Yes, you can see it actually moved, and I actually followed it a bit, which makes the change more efficient than if you just kept pointing north. Lowering your orbit. Basically, fire retrograde. Yeah, so from above, we still look circular, but we're circle's now been tilted. Imagine lowering your orbit's altitude is very much like raising it, only in reverse. Because there's no air up here, we can use our maneuvering energies to decelerate as well as accelerate. Because nothing says we have to be facing one direction or another. We can just turn retrograde and burn at any time now, so let's get into it. So this is retrograde. The retrograde, besides having the X, which is sometimes hard to see, the lines are basically 3 pi wedges, where the prograde, it's straight across the other two and not slightly downsloped. And let's start those engines, and from above you'll easily see that our periapsis is dropping, and eventually it will get inside the atmosphere. Once it's at about 20 kilometers well inside the atmosphere, you can stop, because once you do get in the atmosphere will slow you down. Now I'm stopping there, and I'm just firing the rocket slightly so we have much more control, so this number isn't changing as quickly. And there we go. So now you're in re-entry course. Once we're below 60, the atmosphere will start slowing down the ship, and we won't have enough velocity to rise back up again. So it says we're on an orbit like this, but once we hit the air, we'll begin slowing down, and so that will come in. In the lesson, you can continue doing maneuvers on your own, or wait for periapsis and re-entry and land. So, I'm gonna do quick landing. Oh, we happen to be there, on the dark side of the planet. Let's just, by the time we get into the atmosphere, yeah, we'll be on the sun side. Alrighty, there we go. We're in the atmosphere. We have landing gear, and we have lots of RCS. But we're gonna take the safe approach and detach that all, because that's way too heavy for the one parachute we have. As we get into the atmosphere, see, this is already dropping, but as we get lower, it'll drop faster and faster as we start decelerating more and more due to air friction, and we'll get re-entry and heating effects as the wind blows against us. That should start about 35 kilometers or so. So pretty soon up. Here we go. So we're hitting the thicker air now, and it's heating up as it compresses against the bottom of our craft. This has more mass, so it's not slowing down as quickly as we are. By this time, yeah, this is coming way down. It'll eventually totally disappear, basically. We're still traveling really fast through the atmosphere, over 2 kilometers per second. As we get down in the lower atmosphere, we'll really start to slow down a lot more quickly. Yep, we are now completely on a course to impact the ground. That broke up due to heating, or at least parts of it did. Alright, we are slowing down. We're down to 1.5 kilometers per second. I'm going to turn off SAS because it's using up our electricity. Under 1 kilometer per second. I can pop the parachutes, but that's going to slow us down really quickly. We're already at 3 Gs. So I want to wait until... Probably this is down to 100 meters per second. Although, if we get close to the surface, which we are, this is actually a mountainous area. Let's say at 250. Well, we're not really slowing down anymore. Let's pop the parachute. It partially deploys, slowing us up a lot. And then at 500 meters above the surface, it fully opens, slowing us further. And we're not going to actually have a very nice landing here because it's pretty hilly. Alright, there we go. Parachute fully is opened. We're down to 6.5 to 7 meters per second. I'm just going to time warp us down to the surface somewhat. Yeah. Alright, here we are. We're probably going to wind up sliding and tumbling down. Oh, we didn't. But we're on a really slope. So yeah, this could have been a dangerous landing, especially if we had a tall ship with landing legs, like we did. It would have tumbled and things would have broke. Alright, that was that scenario. I mean, the training. The trainings go on like that. I'm sure you can play more of them if you'd like to learn exactly how everything works. Especially science and landing on the moon and docking. They're all things that are very useful to know. I'm going to try out some of the scenarios here. Let's go with the first one listed. Asteroid Redirect Mission, Orbital Rendezvous. Our Asteroid Redirect Mission, created with the collaboration of NASA, features asteroids orbiting close to Kerbal, as well as new tools that allow you to actually capture one, redirect its orbit, perform science research on it. On this scenario, the Retriever A1 spacecraft is on course to rendezvous with an orbiting asteroid. You're tasked with performing the rendezvous burn, then catch up to the asteroid as you approach the intersection of both orbits. And you can click here to learn more about NASA's actual Asteroid Redirect Mission. Alright. We have a node in 4 hours 26 minutes. And of course we don't know or don't have the current burn ETA, but it's going to be, it uses atomic engines. I'm going to say it's going to be a relatively long burn. Alright, so we are on an orbit here. It's about 2 million meters 2,000 kilometer circular orbit, or relatively circular. It looks like we have a burn here that will take us out to an approaching asteroid. And it'll get us within 120 kilometers of it, which isn't too bad. The burn said it was 4 hours 25 minutes away, so this is 2 hours. So we're approaching apoapsis here in 4 minutes. So then 2 hours will be here, 4 hours and change will be here, and then a little beyond that we have our burn. So let's I'm gonna say left click and click warp here, and we are flying around Kerbin, whole orbit, and that asteroid has gotten closer. Let's see. I want to roll my spacecraft 90 degrees. Turn on SAS. So the solar panels are facing the sun and can charge us. So we are here. We need to make the burn over here. I don't really want to warp to next maneuver because that's going to place us minute before it, and I'm thinking it's going to be longer than a 2-minute burn. Let's warp to here, and you can see we're moving that way. The asteroid is moving in this way. Time warp completed. Alright, let's point in the direction we'll need to be facing for this burn. Now you get a view of the planet here. It's harder to see the craft, so let's face this way. And we do have RCS, but we're doing okay. It's a little hard to maneuver here, but ship's a little bit long, but we're dealing with it. That looks pretty good. Alright, I'm just gonna fire the engines for a second here. Alright, so it's about a minute long burn. So let's just click warp to next maneuver. Okay, so in about 30 seconds we'll start this burn. And then I think we'll do some fine tuning, because we can probably get closer to 100, closer than 119 kilometers. Let's start the burn now. I'm gonna move back because these engines tend to overheat. So at 90%, you're usually perfectly fine. Alright, so I was a bit early on the burn, but it should work out. Except I didn't realize. Why aren't you? You got fuel pipes, right? RCS, we are totally off now. We got about 2/3 of the burn completed and ran out of fuel. And then my attempts to get the... Well, we didn't run out of fuel. There appears to be pipes, but they're obviously not hooked up correctly. In. Can I do more than one at once? In. No, I can't. In. 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 Maybe if I click them all and say out of that one. In. Okay, we should have enough fuel for a good another 30 seconds of burn time. Okay. 111 kilometers. Alright. Let us use RCS and thrust in various directions. Okay, I'm thrusting forward, and that is reducing the separation. Definitely getting it under 100, which I think is the view limit for it to show up as a little speck that gets highlighted. Is something that's wanted. In fact, as long as that... Alright, that was going down, now it's not. So, forward is not the direction we need to use any longer. Let's try that one. No, but the opposite should work. I did press I, I'm now pressing K. And it's slowly moving, but not the greatest. Let's try J. J is also helping. And we have lots of monopropellant, so that's no big deal. Oh. This may use a whole lot of monopropellant and may not get us too much more. I'm at the moment pressing I again. I don't think we're going to get too much closer than 93 with this. Let us warp here. And you'll see as we come around, here comes the asteroid. And at some point, we are a little more than half a kilometer per second slower than the asteroid. Can we get you to show up? It does not appear. And you're not going to stay up. Let's just mouse over it. At this point, okay, that is speeding up. Actually, seems to be getting us further away. Any of these directions help? It's jumping around here, so it's hard to tell. Doesn't really seem to help. Let's get closer. Alright, it seems like we're going to be ahead of it. So if we slow down, let's aim prograde. So that's going to help. Alright, well, it's fine-tuning prograde. That was further, apparently. So it may not seem like much, but I'm firing these little engines to attempt to fine-tune our separation. Turn off RCS. Point retrograde. I think by slowing down right now, we'll get closer initially. Alright, let's try that. Let's throttle up slightly. .37. Now that's definitely getting further apart. Oh, we're going to be here. Okay. I was misreading that for a second. Ah, here's our problem. We are going to be below. So we want to face normal. Which for some reason isn't really showing up. So these are getting closer now. Out of fuel again. 2. Alright. Start on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4. If I say out, are you feeling everybody? I think it is. So I'm not entirely sure that this is how it's supposed to work, with these fuel lines not entirely hooked up. But we are refilling all of these, and we get about 30 seconds or so of use out of them. Back to the map screen. So we need to get this blue line up closer to the green one. $70, $60, $50. Look at that, 25 kilometers. Alright, now we need to go more in a prograde direction, I think. I'm going to say we need to go radial out a bit to move our trajectory out slightly to catch up with it a little sooner. Or not. You know, we may just be going too much up now. 23, 22, 21, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11. 12 it is. Let's just go prograde and say warp here. Alright, so we're really close now. We are about 3 minutes from the asteroid, and there it is. Look at that. Just getting in our field of view. And we're going a lot slower than it is. Alright, let's try to refuel all these engines again. 2, 3, let's start on this side again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, and the center one, we say out on the center one. At some point, we are going to need to activate these. Now, these engines have a lot more thrust, but they're a lot less efficient. So, as much as we can do with these atomic engines, the better will be. What if we say anti-normal, because we're going high above this. If we we can get this within 1 kilometer or so, we're doing pretty good, I think. So, even though we're ahead of this asteroid, we're going a lot slower than it by 400 meters per second. So it's coming up on us. So we need to get going quicker forward. And that would help us somewhat get this. We also need to go radial in, I think. Because, yeah, we are going much further out than it is. It's showing that kind of off. Alright, at this point I think it's just a few minutes, less than a minute from us, so we need to start. Oh, look at that. It is. We're actually very close to it right now. We need to refuel our fuel tanks again. 2, 3, 4. Out. We need to point at the target. It's flown past us, but that's somewhat okay. We need to point right at the target right now and get a move on. See, our speed with the target is decreasing. We're overheating. At this rate of thrust, we shouldn't be overheating. Alright, we have let the asteroid pass us, but we now have a we had another intercept. We are now 47 kilometers behind, but we are now catching up at 100 meters, 150 meters per second. Let's use our RCS. say stability, because that's trying to get our direction of travel directly on. I really don't want to be going this quickly towards the target. Target. Alright, it's not showing an intercept any longer. Which is not really that great. Let's time warp a bit here. Alright, we've come off the target a bit. We want to head back towards the target and we want to slow down. Slow down significantly. We are coming in very hot. Alright, so we're down to 20 meters per second. Still rather fast. Can our RCS slow us down? Not really. $10 meters. That gives us 30 seconds. Again, not great. Alright. Face the target. We're now slowly going away about 1 meter per second. We have lights on this? Doesn't appear so. SES is not cooperating, it's way overshooting. Alright. We want to head towards it. We only have 2 thrusters. 4 would have been nicer. That's why this is problematic. I don't really have control in the one direction. Alright, we are basically heading directly for the asteroid. I'm not going to be using these engines anymore. I'm going to try to get up to about maybe 4 meters per second. We're quite a bit away, and this episode is running quite a bit longer. Alright, 4 meters per second. Got plenty of monopropellant. Gonna start slowing down. 4 meters per second may have been a bit quick. Under 3. About 2, which means we have 15 seconds. Down to 1.5. Alright, so we're coming off the exact center, but oh, and we have hit. We were closer than I thought. We have safely hit, though. And, I think that means we've completed our, task. At least our task of getting... Can we... Why can't we IVA? Can we EVA? Oh, and we're 25 minutes from periapsis. Look at that. Let's, release. RCS back on. Back away slowly. Target the center of mass. Lock on facing the target, and now move in slowly. That should be a bit better. Shows how much resources it has, how much mass it has. Wow, this one's 94% resources. So it looks like you can get a lot of fuel out of asteroids if you have a mining setup. Not showing prograde or retrograde here anymore. If I say orbit, that's radial out. Alright, this will be a bit crazy here, but we should be able to adjust this orbit. Now, I remember if said you needed to get this to escape or to capture it more. But if we throttle up here, yeah, started to spin, but you can see we definitely can adjust its orbit. So I'm going to say that completes this scenario. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time with more Kerbal Space Program.